Wow, just when we thought we had some kind of idea of what was going to happen in The Last Jedi, we were proved horribly wrong by a movie full of forced Marvel humor and a multitude of plot holes. I mean, we should have seen it coming, right? Ever since Disney bought the franchise, there's been no determined path set to be followed. And boy am I glad I stopped watching all the trailers and TV promos they released before the movie came out. I saw the first trailer live when it released at Star Wars Celebration, then closed my eyes to everything else Disney released, just like the director and Mark Hamill advised the fans to do if they didn't want any spoilers. And I just went back and watched all the other trailers and behind the scenes features, and just like the last film, they released way too many plot details and locations. Enough for you to literally form your own idea of what was going to actually happen. Like, chill, Disney, let me enjoy the movie without revealing every fight scene, new character, and planet we're traveling to. Okay, but let me stop real quick and give you a heads up. There will be spoilers in this video, like the entire movie spoiled. I know it's been out for a few weeks, and I don't want to ruin it for that one person watching who hasn't seen it yet. Now, this wasn't a surprise, but the film had the second highest opening weekend of all time and grossed $450 million. After watching it multiple times, the critics finally decided they liked it, but the fans were torn apart by the film. There were so many people who wanted to like it so badly, but the audience was just split down the middle. The film strayed so far from what we've grown up on and was monumentally different than the previous one. I don't know if this was on purpose or just a coincidence, but at one point Kylo Ren tells Rey to let the past die, kill it if you have to, which for me is the director addressing the Star Wars fans on staying true to the originals. I don't know, just food for thought. But the movie is literally about letting go of the past and embracing the future, for an audience who doesn't want to let go of the past and is fearful of the future. Coincidence? I think not. Oh well, moving on, yeah, there were quite a few things that upset everyone in this film, but one thing that they hit the nail on the head with was the stunning visuals. The movie was beautiful to watch. The fight on Crate at the end was the most satisfying and aesthetically pleasing fight I've ever seen, similar to the movie Kong. Kong was an incredible visual masterpiece, and the one fight in the clouds of green tear gas between the survivors and the giant monster demon dogs in Death Valley was hands down the most beautiful fight scene I've ever watched. The rich green smoke added so much to the scene, just like how the deep red salt spray made the battle on Crate 10 times better. Even the fight in Snoke's throne room had this overwhelming tone of red throughout the backdrop and the guards that looked incredible. The casino planet had gorgeous visuals, and Luke's island hideout was incredible too. It was an overall visual masterpiece, but unfortunately that's not all you need to carry an entire film to success. The movie was also salvaged by the impressive fight scenes and it being Carrie Fisher's last performance, as well as a few subtle Easter eggs hidden throughout the film. First off, I loved every second of Carrie Fisher. I'm glad her and the director were such good friends, and that they included Carrie Fisher's daughter more predominantly throughout this film. Even her dog had a little cameo in the movie, and I'm just so happy with her performance as the last one before she passed. And the fights in this movie were the coolest thing to watch unfold. From Rey and Kylo's team up in Snoke's throne room, to Rey and Luke sparring on the island, to the amazing dogfight between the Falcon and all those ties on Crate. All the action was great, the CGI was stunning, and the sound effects sent goosebumps down my spine throughout the whole movie. And I really like the little head nods to the previous films, like when the Falcon's being chased through the salt caves by all the ties, just like when it was being chased through the asteroid field in Empire. The big showdown with Snoke, Rey, and Kylo reminded me of the Return of the Jedi when Vader brought Luke to the Emperor. And even when Kylo asked Rey to join him and rule the galaxy, my mind went back to Vader asking Luke to rule the galaxy with him as father and son. And the last one I caught was the giant battle on Crate, with the walkers being similar to the giant battle on Hoth, even to the point where Kylo took a bunch of troopers and raided the base just like Vader did on Hoth. Oh, I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but the codebreaker Finn and Rose were searching for on Canto Bight was wearing a white suit with a red flower, just like another hero we all know and love. Was this a coincidence? I don't know. But taking a step back, the film was an overall disaster, with too many things just not making sense, pointless plot choices, and a bunch of forced humor constantly pulling you out of the universe, and treating the film like a cartoon. This movie picks up right after The Force Awakens ends, and we're left with all these cool new characters and all these fan theories and expectations of what everything would lead up to in this film, and the director took all of that and threw it right out the window. Luke's lightsaber? That was the biggest cliffhanger ever from the last film, and he simply throws it over his shoulder for a joke? Really? It was built up to be this big thing revealed in the movie, just like Rey's parents, and we get nothing. Even Snoke's size was a huge question, whether he was a giant or not, or if he was a Sith Lord, or where he came from, or anything about him. And he was killed off almost immediately. He mentions finding Kylo Ren after he had fallen, but how? When? What happened? We get nothing. Why don't we get to know any of this cool backstory? And if the humor in this film didn't poorly mirror that of a Marvel movie, I don't know what it was. All the jokes were so uncomfortably forced and straining to pull a laugh from the crowd when all it did was take away from the seriousness of a scene over and over. The Porgs were cute and all, but the best dogfight scene ever between the Falcon and the ties on Crate built up this huge intensity and this feeling of awe, only to be repeatedly interrupted by Porgs randomly screaming in the cockpit and being thrown against the glass. And that feeling of awesomeness just immediately disappeared. The same with Rey's training, and Luke tickles her hand hand with a fern, not to mention how out of character that was for Luke along with all his other awkward one-liners on the island. Everything shouldn't be just based around making jokes. That's not what a Star Wars film is. Even when Snoke force-choked Hux in the beginning, it was less of an actual life-threatening moment for Hux, and it was more of a ragdoll gag similar to Hulk throwing Loki around in the Avengers. When you stray that far away from the point to make a joke, you take the audience so far out of the universe, it almost feels as if you're watching a cartoon with no sense of real danger to any of the characters. And aside from the dreadful humor of the whole movie, there was an enormous amount of plot holes and things that just didn't make sense in the film. The movie constantly ignored common sense simply to further the plot. One of the hardest things to believe is that because Luke sensed Kylo had a little bit of darkness in him, he thought he could just kill him in his sleep. Even that he entertained that thought for a second is ridiculous. This is Luke we're talking about, the hero, the legend himself, who saw the tiniest bit of good in the baddest villain of all film history and was willing to sacrifice himself to save Vader. Killing young Kylo over a little darkness is absurd. And speaking of Kylo, he got rid of that awesome helmet because Snoke referred to him as a child in a mask? Really? Kylo destroys the coolest mask ever over name calling? That's pretty shallow. And okay, the whole situation around Leia's force powers is a little out there. In all the previous films, the extent of her connection with the Force has been being able to reach out and feel someone, which she does with Kylo on the bridge and with Luke when she's later unconscious, but a second later she gets blown to smithereens and is flying through space. First off, the Force doesn't make you invincible. She was near where the explosion was the worst. It's really hard to believe that she survived, let alone after being sucked into space she's unconscious or something until she wakes up enough to force pull herself all the way back to the ship where the doors open, which should have sucked all the main characters waiting on the other side right out into space, but instead everyone is fine. There's nothing grounded in reality here, and this makes the tone of all the other danger in the film superficial with no actual threat to any of the main characters' lives. And don't even get me started on the purple-haired Jurassic Park girl. Poe was just politely asking what was going on because he was concerned and wanted to help, and she couldn't have been more rude. She takes a shot at him bringing unconscious Leia into it, reminding him that her last order was to demote him, then just sits there and smiles in his face as she proceeds to call him some names, treating him like a child, then telling him that he's the last thing they need right now. That's not being a very good leader. Why not just tell Poe the plan? So many people died because they didn't want to tell him. There was no reason he shouldn't know the plan. They were all going to die anyways. And speaking of the Jurassic Park lady, using hyperspace as a weapon? You can do that? Well, that changes everything in Star Wars. Why aren't there a bunch of small fighters being autopiloted into hyperspace at the big bad guys' ships? You could even make a giant brick of a spaceship that weighed a few hundred tons, put a hyperdrive on it, then point it at the Death Star and send it out into hyperspace, and it would have done the trick. You could have even lined up the two Death Stars in a row and taken both out at once if you wanted to. That's such a big part of Star Wars to change, it almost makes all the other movies not make sense. And really quick, Rey's experience with her bow staff as well as swinging the lightsaber around on the island for a day or two was enough for her to fight off 3 of Snoke's elite guards at once. Sure, she's got the Force, but even that's a stretch. And maybe the most baffling thing of all was Finn and Rose's romance. Well, if that's what it was. I honestly couldn't tell. There was no affection shown between the two the entire movie. Then out of nowhere, when Finn is trying to redeem himself from being a traitor in both movies and sacrifice himself to destroy the battering cannon and save the rebellion, little Rose comes out of nowhere, which, side note, she is a maintenance worker and now she's this amazing pilot. It doesn't make sense either. But back to the point. She T-bones Finn, almost killing them both, and stops Finn from taking out the cannon, only to give him a kiss and then pass out. I just didn't follow that at all. And they literally could have avoided all their problems in the casino by simply finding a parking space. That whole thing was way too shallow. In calling Maz to see if she could help break the code, they finished saying that they needed a base with enough power to get a distress signal out to their allies scattered in the Outer Rim, then proceeded to call Maz, who wasn't on the planet they just left but is elsewhere dealing with a union dispute, she says. Why call Maz? Call your allies. Call someone as far away as Maz who can relay the message. That just doesn't make sense. And there were also quite a few times where there was simply no sense of real time. One was when Poe and BB-8 were heading to his X-Wing to go out to blow something up. Poe tells BB-8 to hop in and fire her up, and we see BB-8 roll up to the X-Wing. For the next 30 seconds, we see Poe run around a few more corners before he comes full circle to his X-Wing, where we see BB-8 standing in the same spot as when we left him. Nothing crazy big, just didn't make sense. Even when Rose and Finn escaped in the last shuttle to Crate, they flew straight down to the surface and literally crashed through the front door, got out, said hi to the rebels, then turned around and looked outside to see the First Order already had a dozen walkers heading for them, with Kylo Ren and Hux on board, as well as a ginormous battering cannon headed their way. I don't know how they just got there and then these guys already caught up with them. I don't know. How does that make any sense? There's just numerous small ways the film could have been drastically improved, such as when Finn and Rose go to Canto Bright. If they would have spent those 3 minutes looking for that parking spot, their time and problems in the casino would have been eliminated, leaving more screen time for Rey and Kylo's story to unfold. And take advantage of the beautiful planet of Crate and spend more time there, rather than playing cat and mouse in space so much, and stop trying so hard to force humor in where it doesn't belong. The planet of Crate was such a big card they had to play with. I would have loved to see more happen on the planet rather than the whole capitalism speech in the casino with Finn and Rose. And Kylo Ren and Rey's story was so good. Since I didn't watch any of the trailers leading up to the movie except the very first one, I had no idea this was coming, and it really intrigued me and left me wanting more. Hopefully we'll see more in the next movie and less of this forced Disney humor. But just keep in mind, no matter how grounded your theories are for any upcoming Star Wars movies, don't expect them to be true. The directors are replaced way too often, and Disney now has control over the story and has no intention of staying true to the original films. I think the director just changed for Episode 9 back to J.J. Abrams, who directed Force Awakens, which is good in the sense that we've seen him make a Star Wars movie before, so we have a little bit to go off of, but he still got to salvage all the bits of the story that were thrown away in this last one, and I really hope it turns out a lot better than The Last Jedi. If he can add some stunning visual aspects into the next one too that were done so well in this one, that would be amazing. But hey, let me know what you agree with in this video, and if there's anything I missed, drop it in the comments. I want to know what I missed, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on the movie. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button to keep up with all my future videos, and hit that like button if you enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Jedis don't give up. I got to stop thinking old school, because this is the new generation. In this generation, not only they give up, but they move to an island for 20 years.